Michael Gove, let's pick up on that 1.7 billion education cut that you're going to have to walk into your department and make. Where's it going to come?
Well, the figures that Faisal Islam uses are figures if you equalise a particular percentage across every department. But one thing that we are clear about is that in the Department of Children, Schools and Families, the department that Ed Balls is responsible for, there is waste. We know that overall his budget in this year is £68 billion. And yet we know that the amount that goes to local authorities and then goes to schools, the dedicated schools grant, is just £32 billion. And of that £32 billion, a significant amount is held back by local authorities and doesn't go to schools. We also know that Ed Balls commissioned a report called the Handover Report, which a businessman prepared for him, which revealed that there were significant examples of waste and misallocated expenditure within his department. We've asked for that report to be published, but perhaps out of embarrassment or perhaps for other reasons, the government haven't yet published it. And that report had some telling details. For example, it's the case that on one occasion...
I think I've got the answer to the question, which is, yes, you know exactly where your £1.7 billion cut is going to come. Because Ken Clarke says it takes you 6 months as a minister to find out what on earth's going on in your department. And you've got to make that cut this year. You may say that Faisal has equalised the figures, but give or take 100 million or two, you're talking about 1.7 billion to be cut in the first year. Now, what about publishing your own Gershon report so that we can see how you're going to do it?
Well, it would be nice if the government were to publish their own figures, if they were to publish the Handover Report, which was commissioned by the current Secretary of State, and the person who wrote that report had access to all sorts of figures which haven't, I'm afraid, been extended to us in the same way.
But this is Yabu politics, isn't it? They won't publish their figures, so we're not going to publish ours. Well, why should anyone believe you then?
I'd like to see those figures published. So
the Gershon figures will be published?
Well, I detest Yabu politics, but the point about the Gershon report and the work that was done by Martin Reed is that both of them were serious about dealing with waste, and they worked with this government. But I'm afraid that they were sent away with a flea in their ear, which is why they've joined us, because they think this.
This great partnership that Mr Cameron bid for today is not going to have any transparency. Oh no, we're going to keep the figures up our sleeves. We want you to come and help us, but we won't be helping you with any figures, mate.
We will be more transparent than the current government. We're going to publish the cost of every item of expenditure incurred by government.
But not until the vote.
Well, we're not the government yet. What we have done is that we have spelt out that there are some things within the Department of Children, Schools and Families that we would get rid of. We'd get rid of the contact point database, which, far from keeping children safer, actually puts children at risk. We think that is a misallocation of money. We'd get rid of it. We will get rid of the Qualification and Curriculum Development Authority. A quango, it's a bit of a mouthful, more than that. It's a millstone round the neck of teachers who want to get on with having a more flexible curriculum and the chance to inspire the next generation. Those are specific areas where we would remove some of the waste that currently clutters up the department.
Let us move to the really exciting bit of the manifesto, which is about everybody being able to set up their own schools. All right? Now, this, inevitably, you must accept, is going to lead to a postcode lottery, isn't it? Obviously, if you're in the leafy suburbs or indeed even in the rural wastes, where you've got tight-knit communities and the rest of it, you've got viable groups of people who can put things together, they're going to have lovely, their own set-up schools. But obviously, there are going to be great areas of the country where this won't happen.
Which country are you living in at the moment, John? There's a postcode lottery already with education. We have one of the most segregated and stratified education systems in the developed world.
No, there is a national standard, and there are excellent schools all over the country. There are also bad schools all over the country. But it's a national educational system. You're suggesting one in which little pockets of excellence will spring up
Not at all.
As a result of parents setting up their own schools. But there'll be other places, well, mate, if you don't want to do it, that's it.
No, not at all, John. The situation that you're describing is the situation that prevails at the moment. There are little pockets of excellence. Actually, there's some quite big pockets of excellence where we have fantastic state schools. But there are also large parts of the country where the state provision at the moment is appalling. And often it's the case that those parts of the country where the state provision isn't good enough are those parts of the country where poorer parents live. And you will find that actually the parents who are most anxious and most desperate to have a greater choice and to have new schools are in those areas overwhelmingly run by Labour for years, in which education standards simply haven't been good enough. And if you are wealthy, then you can exercise choice. You can either move to a leafy suburb or you can buy your way into the private system. At the moment, it's the poor who do not have choice, and we would like to extend to them the same sort of choice that the wealthy have and the same sort of choice that poorer citizens in America, Canada and Sweden have.
One of the things which people in Dartford said to me was, you know, we're both working, or on another occasion, I'm a single mum and I'm working, but I haven't got any other time. Where is the time going to come And you saw the man who's already setting up a school in a disused hospital. They're exhausted. They're absolutely played out. They haven't got the hours to do.
Well, Ron Rooney, who's working in Wandsworth to help set up a new school, is a great guy, and there's a fantastic team there. Their task is made more difficult by the bureaucracy which exists at the moment, which is why we're pledged to sweep it away. Whether it's planning or health and safety rules that at the moment inhibit people who want to volunteer and want to set up schools, we'll get rid of them. But critically, while we welcome parental involvement, unlike the government that seems to think that it's a bad thing, it's not parents operating on their own. We are already introducing parents to philanthropists, to school leaders, to education providers who are desperate to try to play their part in improving state education. And this is the big difference between the government and ourselves.
Michael
The
Gove,
government believes that Ed Balls has all the answer. We believe that we need to march with everyone together in our society.
Good moment to leave it. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And the Channel 4 News fact-check team has been hard at work all afternoon unpicking the manifesto and looking at it, amongst other things, the party's statement on who'll benefit from inheritance tax. You can find it at channel4.com/factcheck. Still to come tonight, worrying about the loose nukes? President Obama summons the world's leaders to Washington to tackle the threat of terrorists acquiring nuclear weapons. And the UK Independence Party launches its election campaign with a pledge not to